We're all comfortable. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Medway's Full Council, which is being live streamed via the council website. The Mayor's Chaplain, Major Ian Payne, will now say prayers.
Madam Mayor, councillors, officers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I want to start my thoughts just to say thank you for members who attended. A bit selfish this is, but I'm sure you won't mind, Madam Mayor, once in 3 years being selfish. To thank you for attending the Salvation Army's 150th anniversary at Rochester Cathedral. I don't think we've seen as many councillors. One particular councillor I've been asking for 3 years to come to something. The Salvation Army came and the roof still stayed on the cathedral. So I was delighted that you came and you supported us, and with our international leader as well. So thank you very much, members, for your support on that. And I come really to my last opportunity to offer you pearls of wisdom. You hear sometimes where we throw pearls? Well, they're wisdom. And I've been privileged for the last 3 years to be doing this for you, and I've been very grateful. I don't take it for granted, but I've been very grateful. First online, and then you couldn't believe what you saw online, so you wanted to see me in the life, and here you got it. And I've been very grateful to be able to be that support to you, Madam Mayor, and to past Mayor Habib, and to councillors. And thank you for the way that you've treated me and enabled me to support you in the ways that I have. Since I've become chaplain, every week I've prayed for every single councillor in this chamber, every week, on a particular day. I don't know if it's done you any good. Some I would question. Has it done me any good? Well, you can answer that. But you've been remembered in my devotions on a Tuesday morning, once a week in the last 3 years. And it's just given me that opportunity. Most of you, I don't know your backgrounds, but it's given me that opportunity to share what I have. And I'm very much a person who supports the multi-faith in the sense of those do what they want to do and be what they want to be. My bag is Christianity, and I like it. If somebody is Hinduism or Sikhism or Judaism or Baha'i or of non-faith, they're still mates, because we have something to learn off each other, very much. So it's been great to be here. And you're on the cusp of a new adventure. Do you think that? You're on the cusp of a new adventure, and who knows? And this past week I've been preparing for a sermon. I was going to have a Sunday off this week, but I'm needed elsewhere in the southeast, so I was preparing my sermon and I was looking at a story in the Bible, and one that I came to in the Old Testament. I don't often go to the Old Testament, can't understand some of the words really, but it spoke about the valley of dry bones, and I thought, oh, what an ideal one for a council evening. Valley of dry bones. It's a good ending, by the way, but I'll let you find it. But there's no similarity about what I see here before me tonight. But it piqued my interest, and in short, it's about a man, a priest, a prophet called Ezekiel, and he goes into this valley of dry, dusty old bones. And what did he see? It's what he saw. He just saw bones and dust and death. And God said to him, "What do you see?" And he said, "I see." What did God see? He saw a vast army, a mighty army. And I want to say to you all, as you approach the ballot box, as we all, what do you see? And I'm not talking about red, blue, yellow, orange, whatever the colour is. What do you see? Because there's somebody else who will see something far greater and important than what you see, and you share that with them and go that journey with them. A vast army is going to make a difference. Absolutely does. But it all depends on who leads that army. If the wrong leader, catastrophe. But the right leader who knows how to look after and care and be the right person in the right place. And we need that more in society today. We need good exampled leaders, showing respect, honesty, integrity, transparency, among some of the qualities, making a difference, big or small. And that begins here. Actually, it begins in my home with me, but it also begins here as public servants, as you all are. And who knows what the future holds. Today's and all our tomorrows is important, and you're going to be part of an army. It's going to be called Medway Council. And what you do and how you lead is going to be really important for the future of the people that you serve in your wards. So I thank you for the privilege of allowing me to be able to come and say a few words. I'm a man of brevity, as you've come to know, but I've also enjoyed your conversations and your best wishes and been able to support you in many ways. So a final prayer together. And as I've said before, if praying is not your thing, it could be meditation, it could be just silence. Just let my words be words that encourage you this evening. Lord God, I thank you for the past 4 years of this council, the many challenges that have been part of everyday life, especially through the COVID years and all that that brought and the challenges it brought to every single ward in this borough. For all the opportunities, challenges of the past 4 years that have been for each member here. I pray for this council as a new term commences. Give wisdom, give courage, boldness to those who will govern. And may we see wisdom, honesty and transparency exampled from this chamber to the community called Medway. We continue to pray for those who still suffer because of war, famine, hardship and personal challenge in this country and beyond our borders, and especially in these economical challenging times for so many. We continue to pray for our first citizen, Mayor Alders and her consort Tony. Thank you for all that they have achieved in their term of office. Continue to give them health and strength for these next few weeks. And finally, Lord, I ask for your peace, your blessing on every life here this evening, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Major Payne. Item 1, apologies for absence. Councillor Kemp, are there any apologies for absence of this meeting?
Yes, I've had apologies from Councillor Thompson, Councillor Ahmed, Councillor Purdy and Councillor Etheridge. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I have apologies from Councillor Harinder Marhill and Councillor Andy Stamp.
Thank you. Councillor Sands. Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or any other significant interests from members of the council? Thank you. Right. Councillor MacDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to declare an OSI as Chair of the Howard Academy Trust on item number 12 and item 17A, and I will be leaving the room for those items.
Thank you. Councillor Murray?
I'm declaring an interest under item 17A, an OSI, because I'm a council-appointed governor on Rochester Girls Grammar School, and I'll be leaving the room for the debate on the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 12, Schools Capital Programme. I'm a governor at Rivermead School and I will also be leaving the room when this is discussed.
Councillor Curry?
Thank you very much. I'm declaring an interest on item 12 as I'm the Vice Chair of Governance at Luton Primary.
Councillor Halcroft-Scott?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm declaring an interest as I'm Vice Chair of Governors at Victory Academy, Holcombe Grammar School for Boys and New Horizons.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I declare an interest in item 12. I'm an employee of Lee Academies Trust, which runs several grammar schools in the area and also has involvement in capital receipts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Lovely. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 3, record of meeting. Is it agreed that I sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of February 2023 as an accurate record? Thank you. As this is the last council meeting before the local elections, I would like to thank all of the councillors for their service to the people of Medway over the past 4 years. And also, some of our councillors are stepping down in a fortnight's time, and I would like to pay particular tribute to them, as some have served not only on Medway Council, but on Medway's councils before and authorities. I would also like to take this opportunity to remember all of our 4 serving councillors who passed away during the last 4 years, namely councillors Tashi Boutte, Nick Bowler, Steve Isles and Mick Prendergast. And finally, can I remind members to also that any written copies of amendments are brought up to the top table first. Thank you. Item 5, Leader's Announcement. May I call on the Leader of the Council to make any announcements?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I may. I don't normally, but I want to refer to last night's hustings, better known as the Labour Party rally. At that time, I made an error in as much as I accused the Labour group of boycotting Armed Forces Day. And when I checked, I was wrong. And I regret being wrong. And I think in terms, I was listening intently to Ian, and when he talked about honesty and integrity, I think it's only right and proper that I admit that I was wrong. There are extenuating circumstances, though, because what I should have referred to was the Battle of Medway. And if I just, in my defence, Madam Mayor, read a very brief extract here to explain why I was confused. And it says the Medway Council leader, Councillor Alan Jarrett, hits back at Labour Party plans to boycott the Battle of Medway events. The Tories have hit back at Labour plans to boycott Battle of Medway events in protest at planned Shore Start closures. Labour Councillor Vince Maple, Theresa Murray, Adam Price and Andy Stamp last week announced they would not be accepting any civic invitations to events marking the 350th anniversary of the Dutch raid. This was after the council voted to begin consultation on plans which included the preferred option to close the 19 Shore Start centres across the towns and create larger super hubs. An open letter sent to Councillor Leader Alan Jarrett accused the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of ignoring opinion and rubber stamping the consultation exercise without much overview or indeed any scrutiny. But this week, Councillor Jarrett responded with his own open letter to Councillor Maple, in which he said the Labour group had plumbed new depths. He wrote, "Your blatant attempt to skew the consultation exercise being carried out on the future of our children's centres risks us seeing an unrepresentative response to what ought to be a fair and open consultation to establish the genuinely held views of service users. Instead, we once again see a consultation exercise in Medway being hijacked by Labour in pursuit of its narrow political aims. Your stance on the Battle of Medway commemoration is something of which you should be ashamed. For too long, Labour in Medway has disrespected our traditions, our history, our heritage and our people. Even as recently as the last meeting of Medway, some of your elected members shows disrespect to our national anthem. Now you go a step further by showing blatant disrespect to our armed forces, the very people who have given their lives to maintain our freedom and democracy." And I close by saying, Madam Mayor, that on this side, our support for our armed forces is unequivocal. That is my rather pathetic reason for getting it wrong last night, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Councillor Maple.
Thank you, Mayor Aldous, and I welcome the leader's announcements tonight. I was pleased you put the record straight within 24 hours. We would never boycott Armed Forces Day. As many people know in this chamber, the reason Medway is my home is because my dad served proudly in the Royal Navy for more than 20 years. So I'm pleased you've put the record straight. And let's just remember, absolutely right. I remember that Overview and Scrutiny committee I referred to in that letter, where Conservative councillors said not one word to defend Shore Starts. And the simple choice will be, as we'll speak about in 2 weeks' time, whether they value the people of Medway, those Shore Starts which were shut by this Conservative administration, or indeed remembering a battle hundreds of years ago which we lost. So, Mayor Aldous, I do welcome and I am grateful, and I will state on social media, I'm grateful for receiving the leaders a recognition of his error yesterday evening. Thank you.
Councillor Murray, have you a point of order? If not, I shall move on.
No, I've got something to add, thank you. What I want to add, Madam Mayor...
I'm ever so sorry, we can't...
well, I want to actually apologise to Councillor Jarrett, because last night I called him a liar, because it seemed that he was one. Today, it seems that he wasn't lying, he'd got it wrong. And for that, I appreciate the fact that he's been honest and transparent. But I also want to put on record, I have no regrets. I defended Sure Start. Our action didn't disrupt the consultation.
Thank you very much, Councillor
And
Murray.
I would do that to my dying day.
Right, item 6, petitions. Are there any members of the public wish to hand in a petition? If so, please come straight to the microphone and read out the title of the petition. No, we don't. Will any councillors now indicate if they wish to hand in a petition? No, lovely. Thank you very much. Now move on to item 7, public questions. We have 30 minutes to deal with 8 public questions on the agenda. We have given an undertaking that people will be able to read out their questions, so I would now call on the questions out in the order printed on the agenda. Please would those who are asking questions come to the microphone in the front of the public gallery, and may I ask those to have clear questions and that they should not exceed 3 minutes. Thank you, those that are answering the questions. Tony Oliver.
Good evening. What is being done to make the owners of the site at Doghead Road machine shop structure clean up the site? It is currently...
I'm sorry, can you just pause a little while, because at the moment we can't hear you. We're sorting the microphone out.
Okay. Sorry, I'll start again. What is being done to make the owners of the site at Dockhead Road machine shop structure clean up the site? It is currently overgrown and an eyesore for the area. It has planning permission, I understand, with restrictions on it, but it has been on and off now and in this state for approximately 4 years now, and is getting worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chitty, would you please respond?
Thank you very much for your question, Ms. Oliver. We are working with the current owners of the site and structure to clear their outstanding conditions attached to their planning approvals and to implement the most recent permission. There have been a delay due to the significant increase in construction costs associated with material and labour, which did mean they had to change their scheme to ensure it was both financially deliverable and also respected the historic nature of the site. It is hoped that implementation will start shortly.
Thank you. Tracy Wilson, will you please come up and ask your question?
Not present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We move on to Andrew Sweeting. Would you please come and ask your question?
Not present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Ben Rist?
Not present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Vivian Parker, thank you.
What is the council going to do about people driving the wrong way down Brake Avenue, Chatham? I and other people have nearly suffered a car accident meeting people driving the wrong way.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer, would you please respond?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your question, Miss Parker. The one-way section of Brake Avenue is enforced by no entry signs, and the road markings at the junction with King George Road
I am very sorry to hear that you had an experience of a near miss when drivers ignore these signs. When this happens, drivers are committing a moving traffic offence, which at present time can only be enforced by the police. We will, however, pass on your concerns to the police and ask them to observe the junction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris Spalding, will you please ask your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the spring budget on the 15th of March 2023, the Chancellor of the Exchequer announced a one-year fund of £63.3 million being made available for publicly owned leisure centres with swimming pools. This fund is being managed by Sport England and allows local authorities to apply for funding for leisure centres with swimming pools that face immediate cost pressures, including operational maintenance costs as well as energy bills. £40 million of that is being made available for capital investment to improve the energy efficiency of such public facilities, while the remainder comes in revenue grants. Can Councillor Doe confirm that Medway Council has in fact applied for money from this fund for Who's Sports Centre, including how much has been asked for? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doe, would you please respond?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for your question, Mr. Spalding. It's certainly our intention to bid for funding from the recently announced Swimming Pool Support Fund, but at present we can't submit bids because Sport England is still working with the Department for Culture, Media and Sport to set the fund criteria and the application process. And we'll be publishing details in due course. But we have made them aware that we're interested in bidding, and obviously we will do so. But I can't give you any specifics as yet because we don't know the criteria against which that's going to be judged.
Thank you. John Castle, would you please ask your question?
Numbers published recently have highlighted that some GP surgeries have a very high number of patients registered. In particular, St Mary's Island Surgeries has over 34,000 patients. One of 4 practices in Medway with more than 20,000 patients register. Does the portfolio holder agree with me that this data shows both an unsustainable number of patients registered at some practices in Medway and a chronic lack of GPs in Medway?
Thank you. Councillor Brake, will you please respond?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Castle, for your question. It is nationally, regionally and locally accepted that more general practitioners are needed to meet the needs of a growing population. Within Medway, we have been working with the Kenton Medway Integrated Care Board, also known as the ICB, who have responsibility for the commissioning of primary care to highlight local issues impacting on the care and support available and provided to patients in primary care. There are a number of programs currently in place to attract and employ more GPs in Medway. There is also a specific GP and primary care strategy that has recently been developed by the Kenton Medway ICB to help deliver additional GP capacity and improve services locally. We will continue to work with our NHS partners and support our colleagues to enable local people to access the care and support they require within Medway. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Ben Pransky is unable to attend tonight, so he will be given a written response to his question. We now move on to item 8, the leader's report. We now have 35 minutes to receive and debate the leader's report. May I call on the leader to present his report? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As you will be well aware, this is my last full council meeting after 26 years as a councillor on this authority, and I leave here proud of all we have achieved and all the progress we've made. My proudest achievements have been that we've managed to maintain frontline services to a high standard. For example, we kept weekly collections, which is one of the few across the whole country, despite the Labour group pushing the union line of 3 weekly collections at one time, Madam Mayor. Subsequently, of course, they've decided to become Conservative light by promising it in their manifesto together with the rest of Conservative policies. The achievement I hold dearest, however, is our work during COVID. We led the way in testing regimes and made decisions daily to save people's lives and livelihoods. We distributed over £115 million in grants during this period, and I know these measures have benefited thousands of people's lives. I want to thank my Cabinet and supporters in our group who have been steadfast throughout these years. We've been committed to the vision of making Medway the great place it is today, and we have delivered long-lasting change, invariably in the face of opposition from Labour. We've grown our economy with more businesses and more jobs, which has increased to almost 6 billion GVA. We've delivered successful projects across our 5 towns and our villages, and we will continue this as a Conservative administration after the 4th of May, continuing the pace I committed to at the beginning of my leadership 8 years ago. I said at last night's meeting that this has been about delivery rather than rhetoric. We have improved Medway whilst Labour have talked about it. We have brought forward improvements month on month, year on year, whilst Labour has sought to obstruct us, and its voting record demonstrates that. Our journey with Children's Services is ongoing, and we have had positive feedback since our final monitoring visit by Ofsted inspectors in February. Inspectors were reviewing progress relating to the front door, with a particular focus on how the service responds to contacts and referrals and the quality of work. The inspectors found that increased capacity in both the family solutions and assessment services means that children and families are now receiving timely help, support and protection, and the Council has been proactive in responding to these challenges. Other key developments have included securing additional staffing capacity in the service through the appointment of project teams to support our children's social work service. The project to update signs of safety forms on Mosaic is progressing well, and the project plan is overseen by the project group with regular reports to the leadership meetings attended by Councillor Isles and myself. The DfE have agreed funding for additional quality assurance capacity into this year to support ongoing oversight of practice. Children's Services maintains a continued focus on preparation for their upcoming full re-inspection by Ofsted in the summer, which I hope will evidence the clear strides that we have made in the service. In health, NHS Kent and Medway have now developed and are consulting on the ICB Joint Forward Plan, which sets out the NHS ambition for the period 2023 to 2027 and was shared with the Medway Health and Wellbeing Board last week. It's important that we continue to work with our NHS partners and other stakeholders to identify and embed the needs and priorities for Medway's population and push those to the forefront. Our public health team is also in the process of putting together our new joint local health and wellbeing strategy for Medway. This strategy sets out our local ambition to improve outcomes for the population over the next 5 years and feeds into the integrated care strategy for Kent and Medway. We've also established a Medway Combating Drugs Partnership, which brings together all key partners and stakeholders to address the challenge arising from the use of illegal drugs but also alcohol. Medway is also the first area in the South East to be awarded the status of Health Determinants Research Collaborative, and we are building our team which will really help to shape local priorities and outcomes in Medway, always putting Medway residents first. In terms of putting Medway residents first, Madam Mayor, I was shocked to hear Councillor Maple say that we should send our own Medway children out of the area in order to make way for UASCs. Shamefully, he would put illegal immigrants before the needs of Medway children. In terms of our regeneration programme, we have a multitude of successes over the years, too numerous to mention them all. This has been at the root of our work to create new businesses and jobs all across Medway. We have 2 major companies together investing £10.5 million in Medway, recent announcements, with BA Systems also planning a further significant investment. Our tourism offer now produces income of £360 million a year, with 7,000 jobs supporting that. The IPM is developing into a real success story, and we have had 2 very successful events at both sites since our last meeting. There is increasing interest in the IPM offer, but we must hold true to our principles of this site being for high quality, high GVA jobs if we are to realise our ambitions for Medway. In Strood, Medway Development Company are undertaking Civic Centre site enabling works and have procured a design team to undertake a design review and submit a planning application. It is envisaged that the site will be transferred to MDC once planning permission has been obtained, and the Strood Riverside site will come forward once the Civic site commences construction. The River Walk has been reopened around the Civic Centre site for residents to enjoy. At Rochester Riverside, the new school is due to be completed in August, with mobile classrooms installed at the Pilgrim School to accommodate delays in the build by Countryside Properties. Countryside Properties will mitigate further delays and make up lost time. Phase 7 at the Riverside now has planning permission for 154 residential units, together with the provision of associated landscaping, refuge storage, cycle parking, car parking, road infrastructure and associated works. Madam Mayor, the Council has also submitted 3 applications to DLUC for the Brownfield Release Fund in Round 2 to enable the following developments to come forward in Chatham and Strood: the former Debenhams building, Mountbatten House and the Strood Civic site. We expect to learn the outcome of the bids next summer. For Debenhams, the bid is over 1.1 million and has been bid for to support the delivery of 68 new apartments. This site will create sustainable living, with residents being able to live and work in central Chatham, increasing footfall and spending power in the High Street. For Mountbatten House, we have a bid for over 1.1 million to enable 164 homes to be delivered, bringing forward a use for this site, which is critical for the regeneration of the Riverside area. And the scheme complements the Garrison Point and Chatham waterfront developments, which are currently in construction. 90% of homes at Garrison Point have been sold, Madam Mayor, with 10 units already occupied. For Strood Civic, the bid is for 1.7 million to enable around 171 homes to be delivered. The funding will facilitate enabling works for the development and is in accordance with the Strood Local Master Plan objectives. In terms of the public realm, 2 rounds of public engagement have been undertaken regarding the design of the paddock. Feedback has been shared through social media posts, Medway Matters and our website. The main contractor is due to be appointed this month for works to commence in May. The Council has also submitted a bid for the Shared Prosperity Fund, with the main application being centred around the investment plan and fulfilled certain criteria around rurality. We were invited to submit applications for the Rural Economic Prosperity Fund and heard last week that we've been awarded £400,000 over the next 2 years. Our bid was focused on the Hoo Peninsula and covers the administration of a Medway Coast Destination Fund, improvements to tourism infrastructure including rights of way, green spaces and coastal destinations such as Grain Coastal Park. We have refurbished a number of play areas, with 6 being identified for play equipment refurbishment in this year's priority programme. These have included King's Thrift at Wigmore, Perry Street in Chatham, Balmoral Gardens in Gillingham and the complete refurbishment at Ballinswood in Lordswood. HIF is moving forward, with the base scheme design being in a position where environment mitigation measures are being finalised for future review under the submission scheme requirement. Hoo Wetlands Reserve received planning permission on the 28th of March, and the SEMS public right-of-way project has begun, with a contract being let to identify improvements required on 4.5 kilometres of local path network. Very importantly, Madam Mayor, a statement of intent has been signed with the Hoo Consortium and shared with Homes England. It confirms collaborative working and maximising respective investments from HIF and developer contributions to deliver housing and sustainable infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you.
Councillor Maple.
Mayor Aldous, can I start by echoing your words? There's a number of people in this chamber tonight who won't be back here again on a Thursday night. They may be breathing a sigh of relief, but let me say this, whatever colour rosette you wear, nobody forces you to be here. People choose to give public service, and we may have had fundamental disagreements, but I respect every person in this chamber who has given their years, in sometimes decades of service, and I thank them for that. And it's important to remember those 4 colleagues we've tragically lost over the last 4 years. I will remember Nick in particular at the moment. He'd definitely be talking about the polls and who's top of the league, and still have things to moan about, I'm sure. But let me just say this. I just want to clarify whether the leader of the council, and I paid tribute to him last night for his defence robustly of unitary authorities. Whoever takes over this place following May the 4th needs to be another champion for unitary authorities. But is he actually saying that 4-year-old children are illegal immigrants? Is that what you're actually saying? You'll have an opportunity, only 3 minutes, not like the amount of minutes you've just had, to clarify that. And can you, while you're clarifying that, I think Councillor Lamas said that the MP's office is moving to the Innovation Park Medway. Does he think an MP's office is full of innovation? I don't. That's not innovation. Innovation is the new technical jobs, the engineering jobs that we want so desperately for our community. Mayor Aldous, we mentioned what's happened over the last few years here at Medway Council, and one of the things we should be really proud of is the hard-working women and men in our public health department. They were actually at the very front line of COVID, so it's pretty disrespectful that the Conservative government doesn't think it's appropriate to give them months and months of notice of what their budget is going to be for this coming year. It was a matter of days. That's not acceptable. Whoever's running this place needs time to plan. And I'd be interested to hear whether Councillor Brake thinks it's acceptable to have been given just that very short amount of time to confirm what money we will have as a budget. I don't think it was acceptable. We heard that Garrison Point has sold 10% of housing. Perhaps the leader of the council could 90%, but 10% of people living there. Thank you for clarifying that. Can you confirm how many of those are second homes? I'd be interested to hear that. And Mayor Aldous, whatever our views, one thing we should all be very proud of in this council chamber, and I'll finish with this, is the fact that after many years in the doldrums, the red team in Medway are winning. Chatham Town Football Club League champions, and we'll see more red victories in Medway as we go forward. Thank you, Mayor Aldous.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brake. I'm so sorry, David. I should have gone to Councillor Crozier. Councillor Crozier, please.
I beg your pardon, Madam Mayor. I welcome the Leader's report, not for its contents, but for its significance in being his last to this council. I first met Councillor Jarrett in 2001 in High Halstow during the No Airport at Cliff campaign. I was pictured with him and senior leaders of the RSPB behind one of our village signs. These signs included the words, Home of the Heron. This is a reference to the Heronry, the National Nature Reserve, NNR, in High Halstow, which has been designated since 1950. Fortunately for local wildlife and local residents, the Cliff Airport proposal at this time was ruled out in 2003. This administration's first attempt at getting a development plan approved by an independent examiner, it was in 2007. This plan attacked the Hoo Peninsula and proposed to build a new town at Lodge Hill. It was rejected because the council had not considered and discounted alternative locations right across the borough before pressing ahead with Lodge Hill. Madam Mayor, history repeated itself in 2013 when the administration attacked the Hoo Peninsula again with a plan for 5,000 homes at Lodge Hill. Only this time, the site had been rightfully designated as a nationally important bird sanctuary for nightingale later the same year, following a national survey in 2012. Lodge Hill is the best and most important site in the country for this most important species. During the inquiry to decide whether to designate Lodge Hill as a site of scientific special interest, the administration has submitted numerous factual inaccuracies to Natural England. These falsehoods range from denying the level of nightingale present on the site to arguing that the species should not even be listed or protected. They claim that the site was predominantly brownfield, which was also found to be inaccurate. The independent examiner of this plan also asked the administration to go away and come back with evidence that had considered other developments across the borough before pressing ahead with wanting to destroy a nationally important bird sanctuary. The administration could not demonstrate this because they were so fixated on destroying the Hoo Peninsula in order to protect their own areas in Chatham and Rainham. The independent examiner rightly found this local plan unsound and suggested that any new plan presented to the inspectorate should be based on a dispersed spatial strategy. In other words, Madam Mayor, not allowing all the houses in one place in one location, such as the Hoo Peninsula. Madam Mayor, not fazed by the national public humiliation and disrepute, this administration simply ignored this advice, and in 2014, when it loaded the Planning Committee with supportive members, forced through a planning application for 5,000 homes at Lodge Hill, even though such a proposal was ruled out by the inspector the previous year. Local campaigners and wildlife charities were preparing a challenge to this decision in the courts, but successfully called in the application to the Secretary of State instead.
Thank you, Councillor Crozier. Councillor Brake, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Leader, for presenting your report. I was pleased to hear you mention the joint forward plan that NHS Kent and Medway have been developing. And I'd just like to take this opportunity, Leader, of expressing my personal thanks and the thanks of the people of Medway for the help and support and the leadership that you have been giving us over the years. What we see today with the new arrangements now coming into place started life several years ago when the STP, Sustainability Transformation Programme, was put in place. And alongside the Leader, together with our Chief Executive, Neil Davis, we would attend regular meetings with our colleagues in Kent to meet with the NHS representatives, and believe me, the three of us were hard pushed, together with our colleagues from Kent, in making sure that Kent and Medway had a voice at that table to make sure that our needs were being listened to. And in fact, it's down to the Leader and Neil for their guidance in much of what was achieved. The other thing that the Leader mentioned, of course, was the public health. And of course, through public health, we've seen the introduction of the Health and Wellbeing Boards. And during that period of STP, we actually joined together with Kent on a joint Health and Wellbeing Board. But at the same time, Medway still continued to meet on a regular basis to discuss and review and to plan strategy relative to Medway. At that first Health and Wellbeing Board, the medical or clinical representative from Medway was Dr. Peter Green, a doctor well known to us here in Medway, and he made it very clear, prevention has got to be better than the cure. And it's on that basis that we have continued within the Health and Wellbeing Board to make sure that everything that we do, everything we touch, and our strategy has been based on that. Our public health team have in fact taken that very much to the fore, and have introduced and been working very closely with our community, looking at healthy living, making sure that obesity is being dealt with, making sure that smoking cessation is being achieved, and also including what goes on at the Medway Hospital with the maternity, making sure children have a good start in life. All of these have been very much a part of what's gone on as just a part of the work and the welfare that our public health team has been and done for us. But really the point in coming to my feet, Madam Mayor, is to say my thanks, my personal thanks, and that of Medway, to both the Leader and the Chief Executive for their help and support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Alders. The Leader paints a positive picture of children's services, and that positive picture is a reasonable one. Thanks to the hard work of social workers, early help staff, their managers, their supervisors, as well as the extremely able and hard-working senior leadership, children's services, we hope, are gradually emerging from the dark hole that this administration put them in. There's still much to do to remove the stain of the Conservatives' failure, with 2 inadequate judgments and an RI in the past 10 years, but we recognise the progress And we're hopeful for the forthcoming ILACs, and we hope it will show that Medway's most vulnerable young people are safer, more secure and better served. Children's social care and social workers are at the heart of a decent, caring Medway. I pay tribute to the workforce and to the care they show, the difference they make to children's lives that we will often never be aware of, often under the pressure of high caseloads, shifting priorities and intense scrutiny. They deserve our highest regard. And yet we struggle to recruit them, as 80% of local authorities struggle to recruit them. The Conservative government's failed to plan effectively to train sufficient social workers, to reward them appropriately, to manage their caseloads through sufficient local government funding. Councillor Jarrett says he's funded project teams. Yes, he has, but at a great cost to Medway council taxpayers. And the result of this inaction from the government is that measures in Medway are going in the wrong direction. Average caseloads, social workers above target caseloads, a third of social worker posts not filled. All a direct result of the Conservative government failing to plan and failing to resource, as it has failed to plan and failed to resource planning officers, environmental health officers, building control officers, all failure, Mayor Aldous. Councillor Jarrett raises the issue of his challenge to his own government's policy on the equitable distribution of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, a challenge that has cost Medway council taxpayers £26,000 and which so far has failed. He will always put Medway's children's services first, he says. Really? Children's services inadequate in 2013, requires improvement in 2015, inadequate again in 2019, children's centres closed, school measures below national, unacceptable waits for mental health support. Is that putting Medway's children first? Thank you, Mayor Aldous.
Thank you. Councillor Diane Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I saw the creation of Medway Council as a golden opportunity to bring together three authorities in order to create something which was better for the people of Medway. I came from one of those authorities where, despite political differences, the one thing that was apparent was that all members were prepared to work for the benefit of local people, and that was a really great thing. So looking back over 25 years, what can I say that has been achieved? So I look at, which has been referred to, the regeneration. I also hear the words from the person sitting next to me, who always said that anybody who gives me money, I will work with them. It doesn't matter what political party it is, but if they'll give me money, I will work for them, Medway first and Medway led. I look around and I see enhanced leisure provision in Medway Park, in the soon-to-be built splashes. I see community hubs. I see enhanced libraries in Wigmore and in Hempstead, I'm grateful to say. I see a vast provision of further education, which has made it possible for young people here to attend a university. I also see the University Technology College, which was a great first for Medway. I also see the much appreciated waste collection, which is done every single week and continued to be done all the way through COVID. They are very significant things that have been delivered by this council. So what will I take away from here? What will be my memory? Sadly, my memory will be that my colleagues opposite spent a great deal of time in negativity. There were many opportunities that we could have worked together, but they put politics before working together, and that is what I will take away.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Curry.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to pick up on what the leader was talking about in terms of the list of achievements, but I would draw people's attention to the Medway Messenger article yesterday, which has listed a kind of a different list, which is well worth a read. I won't go into detail, but there's a couple of issues I really do feel very strongly about. One of them is in relation to climate change and biodiversity and air pollution in Medway. There was no mention, hardly anything of that in the leader's speech, and yet those things are worse now in Medway than they were when the Tory party took over control. And in addition to that, I want to raise the issue of the local plan. A consistent failure on this authority's ability to deliver a local plan, which is costing Medway hugely in terms of, we've got 7 public inquiries already this year. We have overdevelopment in Cliff and in Capstan Valley and in Rainham. We have car levels now along the A2 in Rainham, which are so bad they are actually over capacity now as a result of uncontrolled and inappropriate development. And that all stems from the fact that we don't have a local plan. That is a significant failure. So 2 issues that are central to the benefit of Medway, the economy of Medway, and most particularly the community of Medway, is the fact that our biodiversity and our climate and our air is worse than it was, and now also we have no local plan and overdevelopment. So to say that there's been achievements when those 2 fundamental things have not been delivered is quite, a real shame, actually, to be honest. And I think the outgoing leader should be ashamed of not achieving those things. Thank you very much.
Councillor Doe.
Councillor Curry won't be surprised at the fact I hardly disagree with him over climate change. I think basically this council's addressed climate change, and I think that it has certainly planned ahead. It isn't something you can just turn a switch on and make sure that everything is absolutely okay. It takes years of work, and that's going on a programme basis, and I think it's been conducted very well. And I thought, until I heard Councillor Curry's remarks this evening, that actually we were, I think, jointly working on climate change, and I'm welcome to take it out of the political arena, because I think it's far too important than the sort of yaboo stuff. I think that if I could also really, I think pay a compliment not only to the leader but to his predecessor as well, of course, whose term as a councillor is coming to an end. I think together they've led Medway for the past 20 years, and I think that what they've done has been really superb. And of course, although we've referred, I think, to the physical side of how we're developing the city centre, we also should acknowledge the enormous growth in our cultural activity, which I think is recognised as being one of the most fast-growing benefits, I think, that anyone shares in the country. I think we're doing extremely well with it, and we are recognised, of course, by the Arts Council as being a major place for their investment. And I think that's something we should be very proud of. And that really, of course, I think is also reflecting because of the enormous boost in tourism, because now the festival programme is getting better and better, and more people are coming from far and wide to see it. So let's not, there may be interests across there in talking Medway down as usual, but quite frankly, these successes are really outstanding. And I think that we should acknowledge those things and actually have a sense of balance. And I'm sure that, unlike the people across the way there, I think the electorate will understand that the achievements that have been made, and I think the result will reflect that.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As members will know, I also was at the birth of Medway Council, and I was indeed one of those people who actually gave Medway its name with many meetings. I have not heard tonight the council leader mention the Corporate Parenting Board and the work that we have done for our children in care on that particular board. We have worked really hard. There's been no negativity on that particular board at all. We've all gone out there together and we have worked for our children in care, which is something that is vitally important for our looked after children. I would also like to thank the members of the Medway Children and Young People's Council, and especially our representative on the Corporate Parenting Board, Sophie, who has been a shining light and made us think about what we have to do for our children in care. So with regards to the negativity, that is not happening, and it will not happen in the future, because we want to make the Corporate Parenting Board, and you who are going to be here, more prominent on this council. Councillor Johnson and I have asked about this on several occasions, and I know the recent portfolio holder who is still here at the meeting, I know that she is possibly in agreement with all of this. So come May, we hope that we will have our own administration so that the members who are on it will make sure the Corporate Parenting Board is a shining light and more prominent on this council.
Thank you. This will be the last one. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Both the leader and Councillor Maple made reference to the work of MDC in Chatham. I would just like to remind members that MDC's contribution to Medway's regeneration goes far beyond the centre of Chatham. The new facility at Britton House for KMPT was done by MDC in conjunction with the council. It was MDC that put in the bid for the one public estate funding, which got the feasibility funding for the project, and then MDC successfully bid for the capital grant, which funded it and supervised those buildings. It also will provide, as well, the new adult education hub, which has just opened. The building of that was supervised by MDC, and it will also provide 44 new social housing units for the housing revenue account, which will house people from our housing list, among others. In addition to that, MDC provided 20 new units at White Road. Those have been lived in for over 2 years now. MDC is now working on the rented affordable accommodation that will go along with Mountbatten House. Hopefully, some of that provision will include housing for care leavers, which is badly needed. It is sad, but I have to remind members, every single member of the Labour group on planning voted against the redevelopment of Mountbatten House and the affordable social housing that goes with it. When it comes to providing social housing for the needs of Medway people, Labour are sadly lacking.
Thank you. Back to the leader, Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's interesting to hear Councillor Curry talk about the things we haven't done. Well, I can tell him one thing, Madam Mayor, through you, that this administration has done more in the last month, or indeed any month you'd like to pick, than the Labour opposition have done in the last 23 years. All we've heard is talk and bluster. And we heard some more of that last night from the current leader of the Labour group. And he talked about quite a lot of things. One of the things that really amused me was he said, if he becomes leader of the council, which is a really moot point, we've got to win the election, he's got to win his own election first, he'll spend less time in Gunwharf, and I could imagine council officers breathing a sigh of relief to see less of Councillor Maple, can't you think so? But that shows a fundamental lack of grasp, doesn't it? Because there's a great deal of difference between leader of a rather ragged opposition for a generation, or however long Councillor Maple's been leader, and an executive function, a fundamental lack of understanding what it takes to run a £500 million organisation with almost £500 million of capital as well. And he also talked about last night, under his administration, they'll form partnerships and they'll work with other people. Just plainly, he's been asleep. He's been a bit like Alice in Wonderland, isn't it? You know, he's been asleep all this time, because we partnership working is one of our raison d'etre. It is and was one of the things that the peer review found, that one of the things that we were particularly good at was partnership working. And partnership working, I refer to the NHS. I didn't have time, because I badly timed my speech, to talk about all the other things, the South East 7, the Unitary Councils Network, our creation and leadership of Greater North Kent. I could go on and on. Councillor Maple, unaware of any of that. How on earth can anyone lead a council and make a decent fisc of it if they don't know what on earth is going on? He hasn't got a clue, has he? And if we listen to him last night, Councillor Maple is, though I disagree with a lot of what he says, he's a great orator. He's good at talking, but he's not good at detail. There was no substance at all last night from what he said. It was all motherhood and apple pie. Everything would be great when people vote Labour. Well, I can tell you, if you look back to the last time Labour had a tenuous hands on the reins of power, what a fisc they made of it, including cutting street cleaning budgets, running up debt that we're still paying for now. So they made a real fisc of that. But I'll just leave my colleagues here with one thing that he did say that I want us to hang on to. He said, we will make mistakes. Too right you will, because you haven't got the ability to do anything but make mistakes. We will make mistakes, but we will do our very best. So, as I said last night, hell is paved over with good intentions, Councillor Maple. Doing your best is not going to be good enough because you are not capable of making it good enough. Madam Mayor, if Labour, heaven forbid, ever get their hands on the reins of power in Medway, it will be a sad day. And just finally, Madam Mayor, even their political assistant has left them. He has preferred a war-torn country to a war-torn Labour group. He has flown the nest, Madam Mayor, and that's, I think that says it all. So, Madam Mayor, this is my last leader's report. I've enjoyed each leader's report because I've been able to set out our agenda for the future, our record in the past, and as I said last night at the Hustings, which I dubbed the Labour Party rally, what I said last night, we talked about delivery, Labour just talked. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm
I'm grateful that Councillor Jarrett was impressed by Councillor Maple's oratory last night, but that was a less than impressive performance.
Thank you very
much. And your microphone's over here. The arrogance is unbelievable.
Please, would understand that we are having terrible problems with the microphone, and if everybody can switch, if everyone can talk to them, that will be brilliant. So thank you very much. We're now going on to item 9, overview and scrutiny activity. We have 25 minutes to receive and debate the report on overview and scrutiny activity. Councillor Buckwell, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, this report is an update since the January Full Council in relation to the activities of overview and scrutiny, which committee meetings have continued, of course, and those have included, for certain of them, the holding to account of current Cabinet members. The Business Support Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which I have the privilege to chair, has met twice in the period since the last full council, and in January we considered a number of reports as are received each year by the committee. Those included the draft capital and revenue budgets for 23-24 for the council, the housing revenue account capital and revenue budgets for the next financial year, and the council plan refresh for the same period. Additionally presented were a Medway North strategic update, which included a members' item which Councillor Osborne brought forward, and also proposed revisions to the council's contract procedure rules. And in our March meeting, in addition to budget and performance monitoring reports, the committee undertook pre-decision scrutiny of the risk strategy annual review and considered the annual review of the Council's petition scheme. And may I thank, Madam Mayor, colleagues, all colleagues who've served on our Scrutiny Committee over the last 4 years, and there are some members on that committee who are not standing, and Councillor Johnson is one of those. I thank him. The audio system, I now become Councillor Etheridge. So all tax demands to him. In my new guise, I will now talk about the Children and Young People Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which reviewed proposed changes to the Children's Specialist Cancer Services Principal Treatment Centre programme, very important issue, and concluded that this did not constitute a substantial variation or development in the provision of health services in Medway. The committee asked to be kept, of course, updated on progress. Other reports presented to the committee included the annual review of school performance and the Children's Social Care Sufficiency Strategy 23 to 25, which the committee reviewed ahead of Cabinet consideration. The Health and Adult Social Care HASC ONS Committee considered a members' item relating to the Rainham Healthy Living Centre, HLC. The committee requested that it be provided an update on primary care provision in Rainham and an update on the wider primary care strategy for Rainham and the Rainham area, in addition to an update on the utilisation of healthy living centres across the borough and their funding. Some of the other items considered by HASC included an update from Medway Community Healthcare, the Kent and Medway Safeguarding Adults Board annual report, the Director of Public Health's annual report, and I add my praise to the Public Health team for their work over this council term, which report focused this year on reducing hypertension in Medway and with an update on the Better Care Fund plan for this current municipal year. The committee also received a member item on the GP Access Task Group. The committee had decided not to submit the interim task group report to the Cabinet pending further task group work, which will be completed this coming summer. However, the minority view of members of that committee was to submit the interim report to Cabinet. That has been considered by Cabinet, and they have determined that the draft recommendations should be looked at again during the summer period to enable completion of work, which would hopefully include further engagement with our GPs. Councillor Etheridge's committee, Regeneration, Culture and Environment, ONS, considered a petition referred to it for further thoughts. This related to speeding and safety hazards on the A230 Maidstone Road, Chatham, between Ridgeway and the A229. And other matters were also considered by the committee. My time's come to an end. I thought perhaps I should claim some injury time for the damaged battery, but nevertheless, colleagues, thank you for bearing with me, and I move the report agenda item 9 from page 67 in the papers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that supported? Thank you. We now go on to debate. Councillor Maple.
Councillor Murray was definitely 100% first, because she didn't speak in the last debate and she pressed her button first. I'm happy to give way, and I'll come in after her, of course.
I just wanted to give you the as leader, but I'm quite happy to take Councillor Murray as a second.
Thank you very much. I'm referring to the Cabinet report of the 4th of April and the leader's reflections on what he believes are highlights of the Council's administration. Councillor Jarrett believes that the difference between the Tory administration and the Labour group is a track record. He thinks he has one and we don't. He's also spent a great deal of time tonight at every council meeting and last night at the hustings trying to undermine Councillor Maple with petty remarks and fantasy jibes. Well, newsflash, Councillor Jarrett, Labour does have a track record, a responsible track record of holding you to account, scrutinising your decisions, putting forward motions and ideas to try to influence the direction and actions of the Council, entering into well-informed and serious debate on the issues that matter to our residents, attending meetings and events, supporting community activities, and perhaps most well-known of all, being there when our residents need us. People in Medway know they can rely on Labour councillors. That's a track record to be proud of. Councillor Jarrett's so worried he's trying to pretend Labour have no experience. We don't understand things that would struggle to run the council. Well, here's the thing, Councillor Jarrett. Our councillors and candidates are both talented and experienced. Among us we have teachers, social workers, experts from the voluntary and community sector, professionals from the environmental and engineering sectors, transport workers, senior managers, ICT and communication workers, small business people, finance and commerce professionals, health workers. The list goes on, and all of them will use their skills and experience and enthusiasm if they're lucky enough to join us in running the council, because they have empathy and understand what the people of Medway need from their council. I'm proud and privileged to work with our leader, Councillor Maple, who is my dear friend, and who was gracious, generous and sincere towards you last night, Councillor Jarrett. He acknowledged those rare occasions when you got things right, gave examples of when we've supported you with things like bids for City of State or our City of Culture, and showed that when you go low, he goes high. You talked a lot about how well you think you've done, but hardly mentioned your team, apart from blaming backbenchers for the appalling failure to produce a local plan. Humility is not your forte, so I wasn't surprised when you ignored all of the Labour government advances for Medway that enabled you to sit back while our government did the work for you. The first new university since 1967, a brand new FE college, Sure Start, new schools, new health centres, funding that matched our community's needs, all struggling now or dismantled with your support when Cameron and his austerity cronies got in. And with help from the Liberals, who remembers them, starved Medway and all local councils of the funding we need and deserve. If Medway give Labour the chance, we'll do better because we care more. We'll rebuild what you've broken, we'll get the things in place you've failed to do, and we'll be good-spirited about it, bringing people with us, sharing and valuing their ideas and expertise, not thinking that we know best. In retirement, Councillor Jarrett, I see you have ambitions to be a man of letters, and judging by the lurid dialogue in your novel, most of those letters will be in groups of 4. Maybe like your gun-toting, barrel-chested hero who drives away from the...
I would remind members that we are debating overview and scrutiny, and if we could keep to this subject, it would be most helpful. Thank you. Now, I will now move on to Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, it was a pleasure to attend the Children's Scrutiny Committee earlier this year. I wasn't on a predecessor council. In fact, when Medway Council was formed, I remember we had a party in the park when I was at primary school to celebrate that, and I think somewhere we still have the celebratory mug that we were given. But nonetheless, over the last 8 years, it's been a pleasure to serve the people of Rainham and to serve on this council. And it was a great opportunity at the Children's Scrutiny Committee to talk about the achievements in education over the time that I've been involved with that role, building on the work of predecessors. Of course, here in Medway, many of you will now know that over 90% of our schools are good and outstanding, and that's testament to the quality of leadership that we have here in our schools in Medway, testament to the work of officers, and I believe testament to the work of Councillor Isles and myself, all in collaboration and working together as one children's system in Medway. Academisation has been good on the whole for Medway. There have been challenges, of course. There's always challenges where there is significant change, and in order to support and strengthen sector leadership, we work with school leaders to establish the Medway Education Leaders Association. Many of you will now be familiar with that group. It's not terminology that perhaps people in the street would be familiar with, but that group has been really important in terms of bringing our primary school leaders together and having that group in place to support dialogue and partnership working with the council. And then across the education sector, we established the Medway Education Partnership, bringing all of those different phases together and working with those wider partners. And of course, over this period of time as well, we've invested over £140 million in our schools in Medway, whether that's through the council or whether that's through direct government funding, making us joint first nationally as a provider of good and outstanding school places. And of course, over that period, we have supported and protected our grammar schools and indeed expanded our grammar schools. And we're going to talk about that more later tonight with the motion on the agenda. I noticed Innovation Park Medway was discussed again at Scrutiny recently, and I think this is a real key project for that virtuous circle of having quality education here in Medway, having those universities in Medway, but also having those businesses in Medway, so you've got those opportunities for those high-value jobs right here in Medway. So I'm really pleased that that project is really coming to fruition and really going strong now. Finally, I would say, Madam Mayor, the people of Medway have a choice in a couple of weeks' time, and I believe that they will vote for this administration once again that has a record of delivery here in Medway.
Councillor Maple.
Thank you very much indeed, Mayor Aldous. I want to firstly pick up on Councillor Diane Chambers' comment around cross-party working. Sometimes people see the council as this chamber and that 35 minutes between me and the leader and other contributions. But the reality is this. In the same way that up at SW1, there's a huge amount of cross-party working. Actually, that's the same here as well. And I would pay tribute to my friend and excellent chair, he may not want to put that on a leaflet, I'm his friend, but excellent chair of business support, overview and scrutiny, Councillor Chris Buckwell. He's done an outstanding job as chair, and I thank him for that. And that was shown actually at our last meeting. We're doing our job. You know, the HIF programme has literally run off the rails. So we took time, collectively, collaboratively, to look at what do we need to do to make sure this council is delivering that really important project in the best possible way, getting value for money, making sure the residents who are directly impacted get the services they need and deserve. So I recognise entirely that throughout this whole 4-year period, we've had some excellent examples of overview and scrutiny. I also want to recognise, and the leader of the council beat me to it, that we've got 2 other individuals who have helped with overview and scrutiny in different ways over the last period. Our brilliant political assistant, Jack, and I thank him for every piece of work he's done, and also to our local democracy reporter, Katie. Thank you for holding all 55 of us to account in the right and appropriate way. Local democracy only works if people know what we're doing, and so I wish you well in your new role. Ultimately, Mayor Aldous, as Martin Potter, Councillor Potter rightfully said, the people of Medway have got a choice in 2 weeks' time. But whatever happens in 2 weeks' time, the role of overview and scrutiny is critically important. And I will remind very publicly at this council meeting tonight, the consistent approach of Labour in opposition have been this. We don't believe it's appropriate for every chair of overview and scrutiny to be from the administration's position, from their party. And if we're fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to serve, those words will become action, because that's what it's about. It's about integrity. It's about saying something and delivering on it. And that's what we will do. We treat democracy seriously. So we will follow through on that if we're given the chance to serve on May the 4th, when people choose change and choose Labour.
Thank you. Councillor Chitty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to respond to some of the comments that Councillor Curry made, which is totally untrue. We did not decide the number of developments required in Medway. That was a government decision, and that is why the local plan, that part of the local plan, was so definitive. We could not get those housing figures reduced, and under the call for sites, we quite rightly had to consider those applications and those sites. Also, about the air quality, we have an absolutely amazing team of officers working in the environmental department. They have been astonishing in the work that they have done, in actual fact, it was recognised by a very substantial £250,000 plus that has come to actually do a specific piece of work on the very area that Councillor Curry chooses to talk about. I would be more impressed if Councillor Curry and his colleagues actually came to the meetings where we discuss these really important subjects. He has chosen quite deliberately not to attend. Now, whether that's because he doesn't want to listen or whether he's not interested, it doesn't matter. He hasn't been a party to that, and I think that's very much a picture of how seriously he takes these issues. He absolutely wants to talk his language and not be part of the real world and be part of what is a fundamentally really important issue for Medway, which is the environment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We're running out of time now, so I'm going to go back to Councillor Wildey.
Thank you. I would just like to mention two things. First, I'm very pleased that the Cabinet supported the idea of the GP task group coming back in the summer. I think that's very important, and the residents of Medway have the right to expect better provision of GPs. The other thing I would like to mention is the Better Care Fund. We agreed to note the BCF plan for 2022 to 23 because this is being updated, and I think that's a very important issue, and we will have to follow this up. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now return to Councillor Buckwell.
Yes, I'm in disguise again, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. I thank members who contributed their remarks. I won't deal with every point raised. With respect to Councillor Murray's comments, I understand. This is election season 2 weeks today, so I appreciate why she said what she did. I think all candidates standing in the election are to be respected, whatever their political views or their alleged non-political independent views. And I'm very proud of the team with which I'm involved. We have the highest number, for example, of African heritage candidates standing in Rochester and Strood, 8 of the 12 wards. I'm immensely proud of that. But all candidates are to be respected, and personal attacks are simply not necessary. I agree with Councillor Potter's remarks. I thank Councillor Maple equally for his courtesy over the last 4 years in overview and scrutiny, and to his colleagues. We have all worked together well on business support, I believe. I note the remarks from my colleagues, Councillor Chitty, whose service I commend over many decades, and Councillor Wildey. And I also agree that the GP task group, and we had cross-party views, differing views on that when it went through business support, but I think it's right that that comes back. We need to hear from the GPs, and we need to look more closely at the differential service standards which appear to be available to the public as between the different practices across our towns. So, Madam Mayor, I leave my remarks at that, but I do commend the report, and I ask all members kindly for their support for it. Thank you.
Is that agreed? We now move on to item 10, members' questions. We have 20 minutes to deal with 8 questions listed on the agenda from members of the council. Any questions not dealt with this evening will receive a written response. May I start with Councillor Edwards?
As written, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Chitty, will you please respond?
I'm sorry, I haven't got the page. I'm very remiss, went and got a cup of tea. How unforgiving is that? Forgive me, I will catch up with you, I promise. Oh.
Right. Are you near to finding your response? Councillor Edwards, do you mind if we move on to the next one and come back to you? Would that be okay? Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson, may I have your question, please?
Thank you, Mayor Alders. A question as printed on the agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Isles, would you mind responding, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Johnson, for your question. The Council's early years sufficiency team support our early years providers and ensure the Council fulfils its statutory duties and its commitment to high quality early years provision. The service works to secure sufficient childcare for working parents, secure early years provision according to eligibility criteria, and they also provide information, advice and assistance to parents and prospective parents, and information, advice and training to childcare providers. Currently, Medway has over 235 childcare providers. The team works with all settings, monitoring the quality and sufficiency of childcare places available to local families so that through a quality early education, children are supported to have the best start in life. Early years forums and briefing sessions are provided throughout the year to support early years providers. The number of childcare and education providers that have engaged with the Council has increased, with 29% of providers taking up the offer of free advice and support. The EYST allocates the government childcare funding to early years providers, and in total it allocates approximately £20 million of government funding to childcare providers locally. In March, the Chancellor announced funding childcare from 9 months and for 2-year-olds, outlining that from April 24, parents will be able to access 15 hours of funded childcare, and from September 24 for children from 9 months of age. The Early Years Forum service is in communication with providers, some of whom have expressed concern regarding financial implications regarding this change. Further advice and guidance will be provided to providers as the Department of Education issues more detailed guidance. As portfolio holder, I continue to push on the big issues such as this, which are affecting most councils nationally, and I ensure I maintain an awareness of everything that's happening within children's services. I've been a huge advocate of children and family hubs, which provide outstanding services such as drop-in sessions for parents and children with activities including baby groups with self-weigh and stay and play sessions, antenatal classes and baby clinics, links with local schools and voluntary agencies, information and advice about breastfeeding, speech and language, parenting, health issues and all difficult experiences.
Thank you very much, Councillor Isles.
That would be too much.
Councillor Chitty, are you ready for us to come back to you?
Thank you very much, and thank you for your indulgence. Thank you for your question, Councillor Edwards. Our high streets are indeed important platforms for economic growth, and that is why we have worked so hard to secure significant external funding to invest in our high streets, and why we are investing millions into Chatham as our city centre. I'm very pleased to be able to tell you the vacancy rates for Medway's town centres are all below the national average. And I'd like to repeat that, all below the national average. And a table is being displayed that sets that out. Chatham vacancies rate is skewed due to the preparatory work we have underway to accommodate the Healthy Living Centre and Innovation Hub on the first floor of the Pentagon. And of course, we require the former Debenhams building and have commercial agents marketing that site. Apart from the Pentagon Centre, the Council owns Brompton, 26 High Street, Gillingham, and 119 Twiddle, Green, Gillingham, all of which are currently occupied. We continue to be proactive in the regeneration of our high streets, continually seeking funding opportunities and, where possible, direct intervention. I think it should be acknowledged that the high streets are doing above the national average, and so therefore you should give due credence to all of those companies, those businesses that work so very hard to actually establish thriving town centres. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Curry, may I have your question now, please?
Written on the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Rodney Chambers, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In answer to your question, Councillor Curry, Medway, together with a number of large HIF schemes across the country, are in discussions with Homes England on our various schemes. And this has been brought about as a result of the global recession and high inflation rates impacting on construction costs and constraining public expenditure. As has been widely trailed, and in the light of consultation, we are proposing to pause our plans for rail and are exploring the potential for alternative transport options to improve access for residents travelling on and off the peninsula. The reframing of the programme and Homes England's deliberations will inevitably impact on the current timelines for delivery, and that forms part of our discussions. A report will be brought to Cabinet when we have a clear view from central government on our proposals.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dyke, may I have your question, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, the question is as written on the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Doe, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, thank you for your question, Councillor Van Dyke, and I, of course, do wholeheartedly agree on the importance of our green spaces. They provide an invaluable resource for our communities, as we've seen in recent weeks. They're very, very popular. It's a testament, I think, to the quality and nature of the sites available in Medway. And can I just remind you that we have got 8 green flags for the excellence of that, and we're hoping to improve on that in the future. So I think that that speaks for itself. Now, as to the actual quantity of investment, in 2021 we spent 4.6 million, in 2022 4.9 million, and in 2023 5.1 million. So I think that, but I don't think you can judge simply, and I think it's something which I've noticed that the Labour Party often does do, actually, is you can't judge things purely on the amount of money that's spent. It's how it's spent as well, and how it's invested. And of course we have now taken steps to radically overhaul the way in which we do our green areas at the edges and so forth. So you know that we are now making them much more ecologically sound, and I think we're still learning on that. But they are being introduced. We are taking the public with us on that, and I think that generally speaking, they're pretty satisfied with the condition of the green spaces, which I think if you go elsewhere, you will see ours compare very favourably.
Thank you very much. As Councillor Mayhill isn't here tonight, he will get a written response. May I go on to Councillor Howcroft-Scott?
Thank you, Mayor Orders. As written on the papers this evening, my question is.
Thank you very much. Councillor Josie Arles, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Howcroft-Scott, for your question. Regarding free school meals provision in Medway, approximately 11,000 children in Medway currently receive free school meals during the school term. You referred to other areas of the UK taking decisions around extending their free school meal provision. I note that the Mayor of London announced that all London primary school children will receive free school meals as a one-off for the 23-24 academic year. to enhance the free school meal provision in Medway in a similar way to the extended provision in London primary schools for all children and young people in Medway, that would require significant additional funding which the Council is unable to accommodate within its current budget position. Medway Council continues to work with the school catering contractors to ensure that our children and young people are getting and will continue to get healthy, nutritious meals and are working within the food plan and government guidelines. In addition, Medway Council spends approximately £2.5 million on free school meal eligible children during the school holidays through the Household Support Fund grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray, may I have your question, please?
As written, thank you.
Councillor Filmer, would you respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Murray, for your question. It's worth noting that we've repaired over 39,000 carriageway defects and undertaken resurfacing schemes on 74 carriageways and 38 footways over the last 4 years. The pothole blitz was introduced to tackle the volume of new defects appearing on the public highways following last winter to ensure that the network remains safe and accessible. We'll continue to invest £4 million on our roads in 2023, utilising both our capital and revenue budgets and the DFT incentive funding. Alongside this, our highways inspections will continue to ensure the network remains as safe and accessible as we can make it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maple, may I have your question, please?
Thank you, Mayor Aldous. My questions to Councillor Brake as written.
Thank you. Councillor Brake, will you respond, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Maple, for your question. There was a significant delay in announcing the public health grant for 2023-24, which when announced in March of this year came with a lower than anticipated uplift of 3.2%. In addition, the public health grant will need to offset pay pressures resulting from the NHS pay awards for staff working in a range of NHS services commissioned by Public Health. I referred earlier this evening to the old saying of prevention is better than the cure. And indeed, this reinforces the value of having well-resourced public health services to support our population. Investing in public health approaches that enable people to live longer and healthier lives and has been shown to reduce the costs of providing NHS, social care and other services. However, whilst noting there have been constraints placed nationally on public health budgets, it should be noted that additional funding has been provided to councils for drug and alcohol treatment, Start for Life programmes and through the new Integrated Care Board arrangements which are focused on addressing health inequalities. As the portfolio holder, I work with James Williams, the Director of Public Health, to ensure the Medway Public Health team continue to work in partnership across all sectors to implement policy and initiatives that improve the health and well-being of all those who live and work and visit Medway. And finally, I add my thanks to James Williams and the Public Health team for the phenomenal work and the programmes that they give. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 11, appointment of Director of Place and Designation, the Director of People, Children and Adult Services as Deputy Chief Executive, page 83. An addendum report was published earlier today which sets out the decision of the Appointments Committee. Members have that in front of them this evening. With that, I will ask Councillor Doe to make the proposal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We interviewed actually 4 really outstanding candidates, 2 in-house and 2 from outside. And we had a very, very difficult decision, I think, to make. You know, it's a sort of embarrassment of riches, really, I think, which says a lot, I think, for the officer corps here as well. But I think that in the end, I think that our choice, you'll see of Adam Bryan. I won't go into his personal CV or anything of that sort, but I think he already knows Medway because he's been dealing with CELEP and various other things. And I think that, he will actually be a very, very good addition to the management team. And it's for that reason that I want to move, first of all, 3.1, which is that the Council approves the appointment of Adam Bryan, agreed by the Appointments Committee as the Director of Place. And also, we need to look, if you look at page 85, which contains the supplementary report, you will see there that we are also asked to agree the proposal that the Director of People, Children's and Adult Services, be also designated Deputy Chief Executive. The reason for that is quite obvious. When the Squire of Winchelsea finally retires, we will then have, Richard will not have a deputy as such, and therefore we do need to have someone who can step in case he's run down by a bus or in case he dares to have a holiday or something like that, or some other. So I think that and therefore it's right that we should appoint someone senior to be able to act in that way, give them the full authority to do so. So I ask you please to add that recommendation, which is 5.2 in the report, and I ask you please to support it.
Is that supported? Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Alderson. I'm pleased to second the proposal from the Deputy Leader. It's worth noting we had a long day on Monday, and both Councillor Doe and I are night owls rather than skylarks, but it was a very good day, and it shows actually, bearing in mind we are just 2 weeks away from an election, that regardless of who's running this place, professionals want to come here. They want to come to Medway, and that's got to be a good thing. And I certainly welcome that. And I agree wholeheartedly, it was an incredibly difficult choice with 4 really incredibly talented people. So I'm very pleased to be supporting that. And also absolutely recognising that we're losing our Deputy Chief Executive because he's becoming the Chief Executive. So it's right and appropriate for a unitary authority like Medway to have a deputy. It's important. I think the deputies of this world do the best jobs out there, in my view. So from that perspective, Dr. Leanne Farrak will do an amazing job. She has done an amazing job already in her current day job, and she will add more to this council as our Deputy Chief Executive, working alongside Richard as our soon-to-be Chief Executive, and Adam as our new Director of Place when he's here later in the year. So very happy to second this on behalf of the Labour and Cooperative Group.
Thank you. No other members? Is that supported? Agree. Thank you. Moving on to item 12. So I'll just give some people a little while to... That's right. If they would like to go to the room at the back. Thank you. Right. Item 12. Additions to the Schools Capital Programme. Councillor Potter, would you like to make your proposal?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report asks for members to support proposals which will ensure we have appropriate levels of good quality mainstream and SEND school places in Medway through to 2027. Table 1 in Section 3 and Table 2 in Section 4 includes a list of projects, and the report also details the mix of available funding to carry out the proposals, which totals around £36 million of additional investment in Medway schools. It also highlights the option for some of these projects to be self-delivered by academy trusts, where the trust is the freeholder of the land and buildings. Medway Council has a statutory duty to provide sufficient school places, and the school place planning strategy describes the principles, methods, and challenges of fulfilling this duty. The proposals in Section 3, 4 and 5 of this report follow the principles set out in that strategy, And they also support the Council's plan priority of supporting Medway's people to realise their potential and the outcome of all children achieving their potential in schools. I would like to draw members' attention to the resource provision for the Maths School in Rochester, which will support our inclusion agenda with provision for high-functioning children with autism who have the academic ability to attend a grammar school. Members will also see that the co-educational proposals are listed. These changes still await approval by the regional director, but if approved, they will provide much greater flexibility when allocating places at these schools. Section 5 identifies projects at academies where the freehold is owned by the Academy Trust. These projects could be self-delivered by the Academy Trust under the scrutiny of the Council's Education Project Team, backed by a formal agreement, the template of which is attached as Appendix 1. By approving the recommendations in Section 12 of the report, members will be ensuring the Council meets its statutory duty to ensure sufficient and appropriate good quality school places are available in both mainstream and specialist provision. I therefore move the recommendations as set out in Section 12 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that supported?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Do you wish
I
to...
reserve the right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Aldous. We will be supporting this item. It's important that Medway's young people have sufficient provision in the right places of good quality and in schools that are effective, both mainstream and special needs. And I thank the Directorate team for the work that they have done in particular. The immediate practicalities are reasonably straightforward. The report looks ahead, though, and that future is less straightforward. The Schools Capital Programme is an iterative process subject to discussion consistently over the years. One feature of the discussion, particularly recently, has been the uncertainty of the sources of funding. The Chief Operating Officer has been pressed on previous plans that involve no basic needs grant, Section 106, prospective Section 106 from current developments, prospective Section 106 from developments not yet started, and, if all that fails, borrowing. That situation was clearly unsatisfactory, and we welcome, and to some extent are rather surprised by, the substantial basic needs grant that underpins this programme, as well as the Safety Valve Intervention Programme grant. So that's all positive, a lot more positive than it seemed to be even a few months ago. However, we will always focus on the risks of unidentified or uncertain funding sources. We will always be wary of borrowing as a solution. School places are the responsibility of the authority, but we cannot provide them without support. And looking at future demand from demographic growth and development, the risks again become very prominent. Those will need to be addressed at the appropriate time. But for the moment, we're happy to support this. We will need to monitor closely the academies that undertake the work themselves, but we're happy to support that element too. Thank you very much, Mayor Aldous.
Thank you. Councillor Isles.
Okay. Sorry. I'm on now. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for your comments, and which I fully concur with in all parts of them. And I would like to assure you that the agreement that would be put into place is very robust in terms of the academies undertaking the programmes themselves. But I am pleased to support the recommendations for Council to approve the additions to the Schools Capital Programme. To reiterate what my colleague has just said, to ensure the appropriate levels of good quality mainstream and SEND school places are available to our children through to 2027. It is my responsibility to ensure the Council meets its statutory obligation to provide sufficient school places, but I am also delighted that this programme supports the Council plan priority of ensuring that our children achieve their potential in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank colleagues for their contributions. I will say that It's always been a mixed picture with the funding, some coming from central government sources, some projects delivered by the Department for Education, and then projects delivered by the council either through basic need or S106 funding. What we have in Medway is an exceptional team of officers, and in particular an exceptional officer that leads up our school organisation team in Paul Clark, who quite frankly has been a knight in shining armour on many occasions when government-led projects perhaps haven't worked out quite as they should have. It was actually a pleasure to meet Nick Gibb, the schools minister, yesterday, who visited Strood, and I was able to show him the new Maritime Academy build. I did make a point of saying how the council had gone above and beyond in terms of securing that site and ensuring that build did get underway, and of course that we're looking forward to that opening next year for children and families in the Strood area. I also took the opportunity to talk about how we really value and cherish our grammar schools here in Medway, and how he'll likely be having correspondence come his way very soon in terms of ensuring we can continue to have that 25% provision of grammar schools here in Medway. That's it from me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Can the members... That's it, they're all coming back, so I should just wait till they get to there. Item 13, Capital Edition, Enforcement of Moving Traffic Offences. Councillor Jarrett, would you like to make a proposal?
Yes, indeed, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to move the recommendations set out in 7.1 for the reasons that are set out very clearly in 3.1. There's no financial implications as a result of Council agreeing these recommendations. If the Council were not to agree, then there certainly would be adverse financial implications for the Council as set out in section 3. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that supported?
Yes, I would like to support that and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Any member? No? Can I take it it's agreed? Wonderful, thank you. Right, on to item 14, contract letting, exceptional circumstances. Councillor Galvin, would you like to make your proposal?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This administration has always strictly followed the contract procedure rules. However, occasionally events do overtake, and it's necessary to make an exemption. As colleagues can see from the graph at 4.3 of the report, this does not happen very often. Therefore, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move the Council notes the contents of the report.
Thank you. Is that supported?
Of my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Maple.
Thank you, Mayor Aldous. The Labour Group will be supporting this report tonight. As Adrian and I think on an annual basis over recent years have discussed this matter. Any council of any political persuasion will have circumstances where this needs to happen. Absolutely right to point out that graph in 4.3. There are other years where it was at an unacceptable level. This is not one of those years. So we will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Brake, did you want to?
Madam Mayor, I have nothing to add to.
Thank you. So I'll go back to Councillor Galvin.
Thank you to colleagues and thank you for Councillor Maple for his comments.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Item 15, Integrated Care Partnership Joint Committee, Terms of Reference. Councillor Jarrett, would you like to make your proposal?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move 4.1 as laid out, which is to agree the revised ICP Joint Committee Terms of Reference. We've talked a little bit about the ICP, ICB, ICS earlier in the meeting on a couple of occasions, and I'd just like to say that as I've been a joint chairman of this ICP partnership over the last couple of years since its formation, and Councillor Brake has been an integral part of the board as well, that it has been really helpful for Medway's status in the county and our joint working with the National Health Service and the emerging ICS. It's been really helpful for us to hold those positions, to fight as best we are able Medway's corner, and I think that there is a better working relationship between this council and the National Health Service as a result of that. In fact, the last meeting we had to discuss matters was just this morning, Madam Mayor, where not Councillor Brake, but I and the leader of the County Council and various officers from health met and discussed issues of the day, in particular how the three statutory authorities, the NHS, Kent County Council and Medway Council, can work better to provide health and social care across Kent and Medway, and certainly we take every opportunity to make sure that Medway's interests are safeguarded. We know that in the past that hasn't always been successful because we have tended to be rode roughshod over in one or two instances, not least with the disagreement we had over stroke provision in Medway, or rather I should say lack of stroke provision. So it's good that we are at the table, is that we are fighting Medway's corner, but doing it in a not in an adversarial way, Madam Mayor, but in a collegiate way, and I think that is the way that you have to work with strategic partners, so that you can disagree at times, but you don't have to fall out in doing so. So moved, Madam Mayor.
Is that supported?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and I reserve the right to speak.
Lovely. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Aldous. The Labour Group will be supporting this appointment. And just to add to what Councillor Jarrett has said, it's long been the ambition of Labour in government to achieve integrated health and care. And the ICP, the ICB, is a step in the right direction, definitely. It's important that the police are there with everybody else, working alongside health professionals and people at the council, especially in the area of mental health, which merits a lot of strengthening. And Councillor Jarrett is quite right to say that over the years, we have had a rough deal. I think very much of the stroke unit, which was fought unsuccessfully by all of us, all the way to judicial review, and similarly with the provision of long-stay mental health care beds in Medway, which we still miss to this day. But I'm optimistic that the ICP can provide good services in Medway, and I think it's, you know, what is happening here is what should be happening everywhere, taking your seat at the table, fighting your corner, not worrying too much about the governance arrangements and thinking more about the people of Medway.
Thank you. Any other members? Councillor Brake.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Other than to say that progress has been extremely good over the period of time that we've continued to meet as partners in this whole programme. Last Friday there was just one example of where the partners all came together, where it was a golden opportunity of reviewing all of the work that's been going on over the last couple of years, the actions that have been put into place, and to finally agree what are the final actions that we need to take to implement all of the work that's been ongoing. Very successful day, and I felt that during that session, which lasted was a whole day of very hard work, intensive talk, and an awful lot of good has come out of that. So I fully support the recommendations that has been put by Councillor Jarrett. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank colleagues for their comments. I think we also have to proceed with a degree of caution. This morning, there was talk from one of the NHS representatives about Section 75s and pooled budgets, and we have to take great care about that because we know the state of NHS finances in general. We know that the ICB, although it is only 9 months old, is being subject to a review and a 30% reduction in its funding, although to me, why it's cost £33 million to run their back office function, I do not know, but anyway, that's a matter for another day. But so I think we have to work hard together and see what we can achieve. In fact, one of the things that has been achieved through Greater North Kent has been Greater North Kent's report, which I commend to people in terms of GP provision as a piece of work to refer to. And I think it's something Overview and Scrutiny in the new administrative period might take into account when they're looking at GP provision, the primary care work that Greater North Kent has done and published on its website. And part of that was a commitment from the National Health Service to provide another 1,000 health professionals, not GPs, I hasten to add, not so simple as that. And when I inquired today, they claim to have so far delivered 736 of those posts. Not unsurprisingly, Madam Mayor, I then asked what they were and where they were, and I'm now awaiting that information. So I think it's an example of us working collectively together. I think, unfortunately, I missed the meeting on Friday through another urgent appointment, but I did attend the symposium, which was very well attended a few months back, with something approaching 200 people, representatives from all across health, local authorities, not just Medway and KCC as the upper tier authorities, but also representatives from district councils. And we came up with the strapline, "Together we can," and I think that is a very good slogan to hang on to. Finally, on this subject, the other thing that we've, Councillor Brake and I have insisted on throughout this is no matter how much we work together and how hard we work together, we cannot delegate our statutory responsibilities. We still retain those no matter what. And so we have to also treat joint working with a degree of caution to make sure that nothing happens to prevent us delivering our statutory responsibilities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that agreed? We move on to item 16, use of emergency provisions and change to the Constitution. Councillor Jarrett, would you like to make a proposal?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I've said on more than one occasion here that we used urgency provisions with reluctancy and only when it's absolutely necessary, only when it really is urgent, Madam Mayor. So these decisions that have been taken are taken for the reasons set out in the report. I think they've had widespread support across the chamber anyway, so I'd like to move section 6, which is to note the use of urgency provisions and to approve the update to the employee delegation scheme, which as ever is very important. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that supported?
Yes, I will support that and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Maypole.
Thank you, Mayor Aldous. The Labour Group will be supporting the noting of this and the change to the Constitution. A couple of my colleagues will speak on specific issues, but I wanted to pick up in particular actually the change to the Constitution, because this is really important, because as a council, again, whoever is here after the 4th of May, one of the things we must always do is recognise when we have an urgent situation, if our Constitution is holding things up and making things more complex than perhaps necessary, we need to change it. It's a living document, to use that terrible cliche. So I think in the circumstance, and again, we may hear about this, we will hear about this particular issue, I think the learning from that is important. So in particular, I want to support the change to the Constitution. I do recognise that this administration has used urgency powers appropriately. There are other councils of all political persuasions who use them in a way which I wouldn't necessarily see as appropriate all of the time. And of course, it goes without saying that there was an increase during the COVID pandemic. By the nature of it, nobody would want to hold up being able to give more money to voluntary sector organisations or the people of Medway. So I do recognise that, and I hope whichever administration comes after May the 4th continues in that approach. The other thing I would say finally before sitting down on this matter is there are a number of occasions in the Constitution where it is appropriate for the leaders of any groups of more than 10%, and that's referred to here. That has always happened. That has always happened with urgency decisions, sometimes quite quickly, but by the nature of things being urgent, that can be the case. So I do recognise that as well. I say colleagues may wish to pick up on one or two of the specifics within the items here today, but I just wanted to place that on record, and I welcome the change to the Constitution because this issue has shown that actually we could be doing that more efficiently in those rare occasions where this particular type of circumstances arise. Thank you, Mayor Aldous.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Aldous. Even in the short period I've been a councillor, I've learnt that items and issues may become a repeating feature of our work. In recognition of that, and as my farewell to one particular matter, I note that, as always, the school funding formula comes to us under an urgency provision, with no opportunity to scrutinise it. I know how concerned about and sympathetic to my concerns Councillor Jarrett has been in the past, how keen he has been to help. Oh no, hold on a minute. No, I'm imagining that, sorry. Anyway, I can set his mind at rest on this issue, thankfully, at the end of my 8 years, that with the help of officers, we have been able to scrutinise the school funding formula. Thank you, Mayor Aldous.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
I've nothing further to add, thank you.
Back to Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And who knows, I may take the opportunity on occasions to look over the fence and scrutinise Councillor Johnson's progress on his allotment up at Hempstead. Yes, as I've said before, we use urgency powers as a last resort, not as a first resort. The points about the Constitution from Councillor Maple are well made. I believe any Constitution should be a guide and not a straitjacket. And when there's need for change, then we change it. We have done that. The Chief Legal Officer always keeps the Constitution under review, as we would expect. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that agreed? We move on to item 7, motions. Motion A. I call upon Councillor Potter to propose a motion at item A.
Madam Mayor, do we need to allow a few moments for members to leave?
I'm so sorry.
Only if they're at a grammar school. This is only grammar school. Well, it talks about all phases, but this is specifically in action grammar schools. Right. Yeah, go on, no.
Councillor Potter.
Can I also get quite a lot of extra time because I'm now on orange, I think? Yeah. No, okay.
Haven't
Yes.
started yet. You're fine, Martin.
Right, okay, thank you. Off we go then. So, under the leadership of this administration, Medway Council has a proud record of delivering quality school places for children in Medway. We continue to be committed to ensuring we have the right education provision to meet the needs and abilities of children across all phases, including supporting and protecting our grammar schools. Furthermore, we are rightly proud of being joint first nationally as a provider of good and outstanding school places, with 90% of our schools good and outstanding here in Medway. As I said earlier, in recent years, over £140 million has been invested in school places in Medway. In the primary phase, over 3,500 primary school places have been created at schools, with new build projects as well, including at Riverside Primary School in my own ward, and of course, with 100 of Who Primary School, we built the primary phase for one form entry, and we are now building the second form entry there, amongst many other projects across Medway over the years and some in the pipeline. There have been over 3,000 mainstream secondary school places created through school expansions and 2 new secondary schools. And as I mentioned earlier, yesterday, we had the Schools Minister, Nick Gibb, visit the Maritime Academy site. And I'm very grateful to Councillor Josie Isles, who worked with Kelly Tolhurst's office to arrange that visit. In the special sector, 586 additional school places have been provided, with projects such as the Abbey Court new build and the expansion of Bradfields. Finally, over 600 selective school places have been created by expanding existing grammar schools through council-funded projects at Rochester Math School, Raynham Mark Grammar School, and we've seen the Department for Education fund expansions at Chatham Grammar School for Girls, I should say, and Rochester Grammar. This Conservative administration and Medway Conservatives are committed to grammar schools as an integral part of the education landscape in Medway. We can and we will continue to expand schools and will utilise Department for Education programmes to provide new provision in Medway. However, no such programmes exist for new grammar schools, and existing grammar schools are now reaching ideal capacity. Despite considerable work to expand our existing schools and changes to admission policies and the work we're doing in terms of the co-educational proposals that are now sitting with the regional director for approval, we will still need grammar annex provision going forwards if we are going to maintain at least 25% grammar provision for our cohorts here in Medway over future years. Therefore, for one last time, members, at least for the next 4 years, I ask you to support the actions as follows: that we continue to explore the options for grammar school annex provision in Medway so the council can continue to meet the local demand for school places across all phases, abilities and needs. We write to the government to seek formal approval in principle for grammar school annex provision in Medway, and we write to all 3 MPs requesting that they make the case for that provision. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. But I've got...
Sorry, what can we do afterwards? Is it supported?
Right, is it supported? Sorry.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak now?
Reserve my right, please.
Thank you. Councillor Lammas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to support the motion on grammar schools, and in doing so, pay tribute to the work of Alan Jarrett and his predecessor, Rodney. In the time that both of them have collectively led the council, I've gone from a primary school student to a secondary school student to a university student and now a counsellor. And in that time, I have benefited massively from the advantage I received from going to a grammar school. It is, without a doubt, the single most transformative part of my life, and I'm extremely grateful for the council for doing the most important things, which are maintaining the grammar school provision and providing the frontline services that people rely upon in Medway and keeping the council tax the lowest in Kent. So I would just like to say thank you. Thank you, Martin, for the work you do to support our grammar schools and their expansion. Thank you to Alan Jarrett, and thank you to Rodney.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Orders. And can I take this opportunity to thank Councillor Potter and Councillor Isles for their work for young people over the last few years and for their unfailing courtesy to me in their roles, despite our very real differences about the administration of young people in Medway. We will be supporting this motion Medway is a selective authority, and we have a responsibility to ensure there is adequate provision for all our young people, both in terms of Medway's geography and in terms of appropriate provision, including for the complete range of abilities. The Directorate team have done and continue to do a good job of responding to the growing pressures that we know that provision of selected places is a real pressure point. I did suggest informally to Councillor Potter that the motion might be amended to specify that any future grammar annex might be on the west side of the Medway, as the motion's preamble strongly implies that that's where the need is. Councillor Potter responded that he was not minded to accept that amendment, and he explained his reasons, not wishing to limit the scope of the review, and I fully understand his reasons for doing so, and I thank him for explaining them. We will not propose that amendment tonight, but it is nevertheless our view that the focus of expansion should be on the west side of the river. Over 1,200 young people cross the Medway each day, possibly several hundred who might be attending grammar schools. And that's not good for them, or for the environment, or for our transport system. This might be my final contribution to the affairs of Medway Council, and it might be appropriate to leave it on this note of cross-party accord, creating for us all a warm glow of harmony, but I'm not going to. I'm going to point out to councillors opposite that the motion claims credit for the Abbey Court secondary provision. And it was your administration that initially refused to build it when it was needed, that it was parents at the school, supported consistently over a lengthy period by the Labour group, despite opposition in council and committee from the Conservative administration, that eventually led to the secondary provision being built. We fought for that alongside the parents, and we were proud to. It's been an honour, Mayor Aldous, to serve on this council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'm on, aren't I? Whilst I'll support the provision for additional grammar school places in Medway, it would seem that these 25% that you're proposing this evening is predicated on the predetermination of the local plan that development will come forward on the Hoo Peninsula, and I find that difficult. I don't find it particularly difficult to take the advice of existing heads of grammar schools that say that there is a hole in the provision, but I do take exception to it being predicated on the development coming forward on the Hoo Peninsula. And can I say, just as a point of order, Madam Mayor, I look forward to the day when we can hear what's going on in this chamber, and I'm certain that I speak for members of the public here, because it's very, very difficult to follow the debate back here. It may be all right up there. So that's really what I'd like to say about that, and we're not sure whether the wording can be changed so that it takes that predication on the development coming forward on the Hoo Peninsula out of that motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That will be addressed by Councillor Potter. Thank you, Councillor Crozier. Councillor Arles?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no hesitation to support this motion, as I should reiterate that the Council recognises the educational needs of all our children across Medway and to provide the level of education appropriate to their abilities. The motion outlines the work done in order to meet the growing demand across primary, secondary and in the SEND sector, and we are proud to be joint first nationally as a provider of good and outstanding schools. It is therefore imperative that we provide a grammar school annex provision to address not only future growth, but to acknowledge the raised capacity concerns that have been mentioned, and also to seek the possibility to provide closer access to children who live within our rural areas. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to members for their contribution and their support for the motion. So I'll first address the wording of the motion and the point raised by Councillor Crozier. The motion states that there is growth proposed and coming forward in the Who area. That is a statement of fact. That's where we are as a council, backed by the HIF programme. If that changes in the future, then it will be for future members of the council to make amendments as such. But that is the current status. I believe will continue going forwards, and therefore that wording will remain as it is, and there's no amendments been proposed. In terms of the challenge going forwards and the location of the annex provision, ideally it would be located west of the river. We have no grammar provision west of the river at the moment, so as Councillor Ars has stated, and as Councillor Johnson has stated, those children all travel across the river to schools mostly in Chatham and Rochester. So that would be the ideal scenario, but we shouldn't limit the scope of this piece of work, because anywhere we can get a grammar annex provision in Medway will be of benefit. So that's why I've kept the word in as it originally was. Okay, so thank you to members for their support, and it will be great to end on a unanimous vote of support for this item. Thank you.
Is that agreed? Lovely. I'll just let the people from the back come forward and... Lovely. We'll now move on to motion B, and I call upon Councillor Maple to make the motion, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Mayor Aldis, and I'm pleased to move the final piece of business of this four-year municipal cycle, and it's talking about who sits here next, and I think that's really important. Mayor Aldis, I don't agree with everything that this government has done over the last 13 years. And one of those things that they've done is brought forward new legislation around how people will be voting in a fortnight's time. But we can't change that law right now. But what we can do is try and ensure that we both make it as easy as possible for all Medway residents to vote. And importantly, we find out how that law has impacted on the people of Medway. It won't come as any surprise to you that I think there are 59 brilliant candidates wearing red rosettes that people should vote for on May the 4th. And if you happen to live in Chatham, Central and Brompton, I want you to vote for Damola, Nina and myself. But I'm a Democrat, even more than I am a Labour Party member. So if you want to vote for Jeff Dewby, if you want to vote for Rob from the Green Party, for Paul, Claude and Habib Jr. from the Conservative Party, that's your democratic right. But what I don't want to happen is if you want to vote for any of those people, that you get turned away from the polling station. And there is a real and present danger of that. People may be sat at home thinking, well, that's not for me, that's fine. I've got my passport, I know where my passport is. And May the 4th turns up, and actually the passport isn't where they thought it was. So that's going to be a real problem. So one of the things I would encourage every resident to do is to apply for one of these. This is a voter authority certificate. Now, of course, you may well have a passport or a driving licence, but again, you may want to have that additional security and knowledge that this is your document that you can put with your polling card to make sure that you definitely will have what you need to play your democratic right. Those are available, and as the motion says, People have got a few more days to apply for one of those, and I'd encourage that to happen. There is an incredibly low take-up, both here in Medway and across the country. And I'm concerned that man or woman who wants to vote for whichever political party, whichever candidate, will be stopped from doing so. So I would encourage that. Now, whatever happens on May the 4th, there will be a new council leader. We know that. We know that there will be a number of new councillors. And one of the things they may well want to do, particularly through Business Support ONS and through the Cabinet, is to look at how this election's new legislation impacted on us. There will be potential freedom of information requests from the new local democracy reporter we'll have, or local authority. Other political blogs are available. But they won't be able to do that. I'm told explicitly, an FOI will be turned down. So we need to send the loudest possible message. Whatever your view of the legislation, it's going to happen this May the 4th. I'm fearful that what will happen is central government will go, well, that's been a bit of a mistake. We definitely won't do that for the next general election. But it's our residents here, residents across Kent, across England, who will miss out on their democratic rights. So, Mayor Aldis, this motion does two simple things. It reminds and encourages this council to encourage residents to make sure they have their voter authority certificate, but time is running out. But more importantly than that still, to make sure that we as locally elected Democrats, whatever our rosette colour may be, have got the ability to look and scrutinise and understand where this has gone wrong. Now, it could be that 0 people get turned away. It could be that 198,000 people get turned away. I suspect the number will be somewhere in between those two. But until we get that data and information, which we're not allowed to have, as the people put here to look after the people of Medway. So, Mayor Aldis, I'm grateful. I understand there is likely to be cross-party consensus on this final motion, which I think sends a good matter to say, actually, whatever our political views, democracy sits above that. But we need to send that message to government to say, look, you've given us legislation to deal with. Let us deal with it. Let us understand how it impacts on Medway and other councils up and down England, so we can make sure that whatever happens on May the 4th, we can do our job as the guardians of democracy, as elected representatives here in Medway. Thank you, Mayor Aldis.
Thank you. Is that supported? Do you wish to speak now?
Right.
Thank you. Councillor Jarrett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. We have discussed this at group. We will be supporting it. I won't pontificate about the whys and wherefores of the legislation. The government is bringing forward legislation, our government, for very well set out reasons. So we will obviously not criticise that. Neither do I personally want to. There are foibles with these proposals, and Councillor Maple has set some of those out. I think we need to, as he said, not focus on the legislation, but focus on the motion. And the motion says to write to Michael Gove, as the final paragraph says, and to allow councils to publish the figure from each ward. We did talk in group whether the drilling down to the ward level was the right approach, whether a borough level might be more appropriate, but nonetheless we decided to support this motion. I rather suspect that letters to the Secretary of State on this matter will be in his in tray for some while, but nonetheless we'll agree to do that. We do need to give our electorate the best opportunities possible to vote, notwithstanding passports. There is an alternative option. There will be sections of the community that will not be as well able to use that option as others. There will be sections of the community that don't have, extraordinary as it may seem in this day and age, that don't have sufficient ID. So there's no doubt in my mind there will be a hopefully very small proportion of people that will be disenfranchised by this legislation. Nonetheless, it's Conservative government legislation, which we support, I personally support. But because my final contribution after 26 years on this authority, Madam Mayor, is to demonstrate what a true Democrat I am and what a true cross-party person I am by asking my group to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Backwell.
Thank you. I have a choice of speakers here, I think. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also support the motion, and I would just say we shouldn't be too shocked about this provision. This provision has applied in Northern Ireland for many years, and I'd be interested to know, with respect to the terms of the motion, what happens in Northern Ireland? Are the statistics of those turned away from elections provided to the local authorities in Northern Ireland? I don't know the answer to that, but that might be worth us asking because it may assist in what we're seeking to achieve. I would just add that I'm sure through the elections team there is full support for presiding officers and their colleagues on the day, because there must be a possibility, however remote, that there will be some people who deliberately attend without ID and seek to make some form of protest about that. I hope those arrangements are there to support those who are acting in a very important capacity for the public good. There are errors with this system, because the guidance says that one of the ID documents you could provide is a passport issued by a member state of the European Economic Area. Why is that wrong? Well, the European Economic Area includes 4 countries beyond the EU member states. It is only EU member state nationals who have the right to vote at local elections. And therefore, if you turn up as a citizen of Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, or Switzerland with the respective passport, you would not be voting because you should not be on the electoral register. So that piece of legislation should be restricted to producing an EU member state passport. But you know, in all of those EU member states, I think I'm right in saying, you have to produce ID to vote. So probably our G voters, as they are on our registers, will be the most familiar with the process of producing ID. But we all have a duty to remind the voters of that. It is a new provision. Like all new provisions, there will be teething problems, I'm sure, but I'm sure we all do, send our good wishes to Bhupinder's team in elections and all who act as presiding and support staff across all our poll stations in the new 24 wards. So I support. Thank you.
Thank you. As there's no other members, can I come back to Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Mayor Aldous, and thank you to those colleagues opposite for supporting this motion, which is really, really important. I think just to pick up on, without going into too much depth, the reasons why this is happening, I mean, I'm entirely unsure as to what those reasons are, given that in 2019, one of the highest turnout elections, there was 1 prosecution for voter fraud in the country. So it does seem a disproportionate and odd response. And I won't go to too much details into terms of the types of ID that can be required, because Councillor Jarrett is right, there is provision for other forms of ID. However, there seems to be disproportionately weighted towards certain elements of the population, given that you can use a bus pass, but you can't use a young person's travel card. So there are certainly discrepancies in this, and I think there will have to be some analysis after the election. And it's shameful that, not shameful, but it's disappointing that Medway will be a guinea pig in this, because we don't really know what the impact is going to be. And I think there certainly will be an impact on people who are turned away. And at a time when trust in politics is at an all-time low, and again, I won't go into the reasons why, but I'm sure we can all make our own assertions on that, to cut people out of the democratic process does not seem the right step to be taking. But nevertheless, it's a step that has been taken by the government, and we will have to deal with the consequences of that here in Medway. But I think the least that we can have is some data to be able to understand and see what the impact has been across the towns, and how we can then learn from that going forward. And I suspect, as Councillor Maple has said, this may not apply in a general election. But thank you for the support anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Maple.
Thank you very much, Mayor Aldous. It was the late Joe Cox that said that we have more in common than that divides us. And I think this motion tonight, because it's about our democratic process, about the very thing that puts us in this chamber, I think it's a powerful message that we'll be supporting this unanimously this evening. I think the point around Iceland and other EEA countries you may want to take up with Michael Gove in a separate letter perhaps, but it's a point well made. And Councillor Khan in her seconding of this makes the strong points that actually, if nothing else, I think any future review of the legislation needs to look carefully about the differentials in some of the types of identification that are acceptable and indeed unacceptable. In Councillor Jarrett's helpful contribution, I agree with you that actually it's about pitching what we're looking at. It wouldn't be appropriate, and this is why this motion very explicitly doesn't talk about polling districts. That would be too small an area. But actually, there will be differentials across our now 24 wards. So I think it is right that we have that information for future decision makers of this council to be able to look at that, to understand what's gone wrong, if there are specific challenges in those communities that we need to look at to further improve this. If this is here to stay, and time will tell, we need to make the very best of this. So, Mayor Aldous, as we close this 4-year cycle, it's a strong message to the people of Medway that we want you to vote. We all want you to probably vote for different people, but we want you to vote. And the last thing we want to see happen is you go to vote and be denied your democratic right. So if you don't have that identification, apply for your VAC. If you need further advice and guidance, look at the council website. Speak to the brilliant election services team here in Medway who have been doing outstanding work and continue to do so. And ultimately, we need to make sure that the legislation is changed to make sure that we have access to that data which we need to have as elected members for the 23 to 27 council to review what's happened on May the 4th. Mayor Aldous, I move the motion.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Before I close the meeting, I'd like to say thank you to every one of you, because it's not an easy job sitting up here as Mayor, and I would thank you all very much for your sort of tolerance. But I've got one bad joke. May the 4th of May be with you. Meeting closed.
Thank you.